The campaign against global warming seems to have gone bust. It started as an effort to protect the environment. It is not that anymore. UC Berkeley visiting scholar Stephen Hayward just wrote a piece in the Wall Street Journal detailing how the movement has been hijacked by obsessions with race and gender. Worries about carbon and rising sea levels have turned into speeches about fighting misogyny and so-called climate justice, whatever that is. Stephen Hayward joins us tonight to explain. Professor, thanks for coming on.
Oh, thank you, Tucker. Isn't it amazing how everything seems to get reduced to race and justice these days?
Well, yeah, but it's especially amazing when topics that have no conceivable connection to race and gender get pulled in. How did that happen?
Well, I mean, the whole point of the article was fairly simple. Most issues go through these long wave cycles. There's lots of early interest. The press gets onto it. Flurry of political activity. Some policies are made. Then we start having consideration of trade-offs. And that's been going on with global warming for several years now. It's really expensive to do what a lot of the climatistas, as I call them, want us to do. And so now that you're seeing more and more expressions, including in the Paris Climate Accord, that we need to consider gender equality and climate justice, that's a sign that the issue has, as the cliche goes, jumped the shark. And no, it's kind of at the end of its string. And public opinion surveys here and in Europe show declining public interest in the whole darn thing.
Well, it's a boutique issue for rich people, obviously, but it's also a little confusing. I mean, even if you think that climate justice is real, or even if you can explain what it is, I've never met anyone who can, or if you think that gender equality is an important part of this, what does that have to do with science? That's not science, is it?
No, not at all. I mean, and that was one of the things I said in the article is look, I'm not questioning any of what is called the consensus about climate science.
Right.
I'm just saying as a political and policy matter, this has run its course. And my goodness, you ought to see my Twitter feed blow up yesterday and today. Apparently, it's not enough to call someone a climate denier anymore when you dissent from climate orthodoxy. I'm getting called a white male supremacist, which is a really a good sign that you've run out of arguments about the issue itself.
Well, yeah, I mean, that doesn't even approach being an argument. It's a primal scream. Wait, you're at Berkeley. How were you allowed to say this at Berkeley? What are you doing there? And good for you for being there, by the way.
Well, yeah, I'm like that Civil War era general who said I'd like to fight surrounded. I think that might have been General Custer, though. I'm not sure. Look, two things that you and your audience should know and maybe be encouraged by a little bit. One is that we ought to make a distinction in all our universities these days between old-fashioned liberals who've dominated universities for decades. That's not a new story.
Right.
But increasingly, the universities are being dominated by a much more radical progressive left that, as we know, often turn to violence to get their way. And a lot of the old-fashioned liberals understand that this is a crisis for the universities. And a lot of them are starting to say, and this is, here I think you want to give props to the administration and many academics at Berkeley who said, we have a problem and we need to have some more conservative voices on our faculty and on our campus. And so they reached out to me a couple years ago and invited me to come, and I'm glad to be there. I'm having a great time. And I get along with most of the liberals on the campus just fine, and the radicals won't engage me at all.
Well, I think that's important to make the distinction. I mean, if liberalism is a concern for civil liberties, a commitment to free speech, a belief in actual diversity, then I'm a liberal and proud to be one. But there aren't many left. I'm glad you found some in Berkeley. That's really heartening. Professor, thank you. It was a great piece.
Well, thank you, Tucker.